Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I am Agi Keramidas and my mission is to inspire you to grow, stand out and take action towards the next level of your life. I interview leaders, authors, successful entrepreneurs, spiritual teachers, exceptional people who will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week and make sure you subscribe to get them as soon as they are released. In today's show, I am thrilled to speak with Dr. Fre Moss. Dr. Fre, you are a thought leader and transformative psychiatrist who has served the mental health industry for nearly 4 decades. While your initial interest in psychiatry was to expand on communication and human connections as primary healing tools, a shift in the medical paradigm in the 80s led to physicians diagnosing patients with imbalances and prescribing medications as a primary way of dealing with life's distress. That led you to take a new approach with your patients, assisting them to reclaim their lives without psychiatric diagnosis and medication. As an advisor, speaker and educator, you are committed to humanity and to globally transforming our mental health conversations. You are also the host of Welcome to Humanity podcast, which explores what it means to be human and how to live an extraordinary life. Dr. Fre, welcome to Personal Development Mastery. It's a joy to be speaking with you today.
The joy is mine. Thank you for having me. It's really, really great to be with you, Agi, this morning. Thank you.
Dr. Fre, I want to start with, actually it is a question that you are familiar with. It's a very simple question and yet it's a very deep question. And I just shared right now, in the introduction, your description. So my question, which is your question really, is Dr. Fre, who are you?
Thank you. So I wondered what day it would finally happen that a podcaster would load me up with that particular question, which I so freely ask in the Welcome to Humanity podcast to nearly all of my guests. So, I watch them sort of quake and quiver when they are faced with this 9-letter question of who are you? So, who I am is I'm a stand for, people having a true voice, for people actually bringing out their authentic message into the world. It is really important to me that people be allowed to speak, and more so in this day and age, that people can listen to everyone and everything, listen to the world around us, be in wonder, be in the miracle, be in curiosity for what is going on, what is happening, what is going on now in my world, but also maybe more importantly, what's going on in your world or this world that is outside of me. Can I take in everything? Can I embrace all of humanity? And if I can do that, it's possible that I can be a stand for other people to do that so that we can sit in the wonder of what life is. Because life is much more extensive, much more expansive than we might actually pay attention to if we focus down on the things that we have been convinced is important to us. Now we have an opportunity to see that there's so much absurdity in life and there's so many incongruencies in life, but there's so much beauty in life and then there's so much misery in life. And there's so many things that I seem to understand. And then there's so much things that I'm completely aimless and lost or anxious and depressed or nervous or fearful. And all of those things play a role in what it really means to be alive. And if I can be a stand for that, perhaps I can be a stand for other people to get all of that and still keep a smile or a joy in every single breath that I take. So that's the best I can deliver this morning into Dr. Fre, who are you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful answer. It was, I don't know what kind of answers you normally get or if people have trouble expressing it. You have obviously thought about it very carefully to describe it. You already mentioned some things which I'm going to come back to a little bit later in the conversation about finding your true voice and the authentic message. But I would really like to have some comments from you on that, in particular, that part of your story where, as a psychiatrist, you realized that the paradigm was to give more labels to people, and excuse me if I'm going to use some simple
Yeah,
terms,
sure.
but label people for this and that, and then give more medication to cure that. So I would love to hear your thoughts, and I know we can't go deep on this topic, but I would love to hear your expertise on this situation that had happened and your response to it.
Yes. So thank you for that question. So what ended up happening, or how this ended up looking like it looks, is I've always been enchanted with the whole notion of communication, creating ideas, and then on the face of ideas, creating plans, and on the face of plans, creating actions, and then actually the world changing as a function of us uttering sound waves and using our ears. The whole idea of communication, the multiplicity and the simplicity, as well as the outcomes of communication, and really have noticed over the years that communication and connection, conversation with people had such immense healing qualities. It created purpose. It created opportunities. So much could happen when we shared our voices. So early in the when I went to college, college didn't work out that perfect for me. So I left college and I went into, I thought I'd take a job and try to figure out what my life was about. And I got a job as in a state hospital as a child care worker. I was working with 12 to 14 and 14 to 16-year-old boys who were housed in a state hospital for an extended period of time. I really enjoyed the conversations. There was so much healing going on between me and these kids who were, less than 10 years. We were less than 10 years apart from me at that point. And I really began to believe that I could do this, that there was something in the world available where conversation could be what I could do for an occupation. So ultimately, the thing I didn't like in that job is the way psychiatrists dealt with the children, actual psychiatrists. So we would call the psychiatrist and say that the child is up too late, or he got in a fight with his friend, or he wasn't listening to the staff. And then the psychiatrist would come and have a 1-second conversation with the child, and then write something in the chart. And then we'd have to hold the child down and inject him full of medicine. And then he would just, be stuporous for the next half a day or a full day. And then we would write that it was successful. And to me, that was just painful, agony. And so I decided the way to go at this would be to use my passion, to use my interest. I even had a brother who was a psychiatrist, so that I would go back in and be a psychiatrist who stood for conversation and connection. And indeed, I went right back to school. I finished off at Wayne State University in Detroit, and then went to Northwestern University Medical School. And before too long, voila, there I am as a psychiatrist. But in the meantime, the paradigm did shift, like you mentioned. In 1987, Prozac was introduced, and then psychiatry all of a sudden became a field of biological psychiatry or chemical imbalances. And it was like, hey, that isn't what I came into the field for. But since you did it, I guess I'll have to be an expert in this area, even though I went in here so that I wouldn't have to medicate people. So over the next several decades, I really learned how to medicate people. And I became, almost ironically, I became an expert psychopharmacologist. But each time that I learned about new medications, I really was skeptical and became more and more skeptical that medicines weren't doing exactly what they were marketed to do. And that these diagnoses that we were freely giving out to our patients, to our clients, to the people who were asking us for assistance, maybe weren't serving them as well as we had hoped. So in 2006, approximately, so that would be almost 15 years later, And really, given that I started my psychiatric career in 1980 at that childcare worker job, we could say 25 years later, 26 years later, I finally decided to take people off their diagnoses, to start looking at people. What would happen if I didn't pay so much attention to the diagnosis or began to take people off medicine? And when I started doing that, people got better so much faster. So it was like shocking how fast people got better. It was truly shocking. And it was reliable that people could get better off their medicines, but it wasn't like for anyone. So with our listeners here, I'm not saying get off your medicine, you'll get better. It takes a lot. You have to have a lot of things aligned. Your family, your friends, your caregivers, you need to be ready to go through the changes that are going to happen once the grip of the medicine is lifted. There might be a methodology so that it's more comfortable than, painful to come off meds. So I'm not saying come off meds. And so I don't want to be heard as that. But what I am saying is that when people are ready, coming off medicine, and not only just coming off medicine, coming off a diagnosis and realizing something like humanity is what we're doing here. So when I'm looking at you or looking at my client, I'm looking eye to eye, and I'm no longer interested in a diagnosis, which creates a permanent power gradient between the doctor and the client. So I began to even the playing field and to start really looking at people as just another human trying to figure out what the next step to take is in life, because that's really all we're doing. That's it. There's nobody who has any kind of good recipe or any kind of good idea other than to be good, be good, do kind acts, create joy, live in a life of some degree of worthiness, be of service to others, maybe be creative. So there's something like really what happens when we're creative. The new paradigm started to soak into my life. And as a psychiatrist, I become less and less interested in diagnosis and medication, and much more interested in self-expression and creativity as a source of healing. So over time, that has been what has occurred. And I now become and have called myself sort of the undoctor. And like you mentioned, a restorative, transformative psychiatrist, one who, when ready, can assist people in coming off their diagnosis, coming off their medication, and then really coming off their whole doctor, undiagnosed, unmedicate, undoctrinate. And what then happens is that communication, connection, and creativity become the source of interactivity, and a worthwhileness actually emerges, meaning the possibility of optimizing a life that was otherwise perhaps lost to a diagnosis or a progressive deterioration of mental health. The possibility of actually having a life that now slopes upward again towards being productive, joyful, actually worthy of living, like really getting the beauty of life, becomes available to any and all people. So now that's what I get to do at this point in my life. Is really, I don't have to act in ways that I was taught. Instead, I can bring back what I went into the field knowing in the first place, which is that communication, connection, conversation, and creativity in the form of self-expression are at the source of all healing of all types. What else is there better to do than communicate with another and then listen to what they have to say and really, really, really get that what they have to say is worth listening to.
Hi, it's Aggie here, interrupting you with something you may find useful. The most frustrating feeling is when you're trying to focus, but you can't get your brain to concentrate and zone in on the important work in front of you. And if it happens to you, you are not alone. 40% of people say they have to make a big effort to concentrate. But if you're having trouble getting focused, I have a solution for you. I'm so excited to be partnering with Brain FM. Brain FM is a great app, and I use it to block out my mental chatter and zone in on my number one priority of the day. Brain FM uses functional music which is backed by science and research, and it is designed to give us that extra edge when we need our undivided attention. But they also have relaxation, meditation, and deep sleep modules that help you unwind and recharge. So if you want to be able to place your full attention exclusively in the activity you choose, whether that's meaningful work or relaxing or getting high quality sleep, right now, Personal Development Mastery Podcast listeners get 20% off Brain FM subscription at brain.fm/Aggie. That's an amazing deal for such a great app. Thousands of people have given 5-star reviews to Brain FM. Find out why. brain.fm/Aggie. I love this approach, and there was a question that came to my mind when you were describing this. And what do you think it would take for more of your colleagues to adopt a similar curiosity at first and maybe a change towards this approach rather than what is most common in Western medicine anyway?
Wow. That's a great question. I don't know exactly what it's going to take. The whole indoctrination of what it is to be a physician. When I went to I love Chicago, Illinois, and I have a warm space for Northwestern University Medical School downtown Chicago. And, my growth and development during the years that I was in Chicago also included sort of the transition from being a medical student to a medical doctor, or, a pre-medical student to a medical student to a doctor. And in that time frame, there's a indoctrination, if you will, of learning what is so, like actually opening ourselves up to a new vocabulary of how the human mind works, how the human body works, who we are as doctors in a stand for the health of the public. What are we supposed to represent? What about, the medical boards, and what about our colleagues, and what about standing together? That creates a whole context as to how to proceed in our particular subspecialties. So in the subspecialty of psychiatry, especially since the mid 80s, it's been a real push towards this notion that biological psychiatry, or that giving medications to offset chemical imbalances, was the acceptable prevailing paradigm. The question you're asking, I think, has to be met with an honesty that my physician colleagues would have to explore, that what they have, or we have been doing, may not be the best approach to actually helping the patients and clients that we committed to helping. That doing what we do just because we do what we do, even if it maybe doesn't work as well as it could, maybe the whole thing is subject to transformation. Maybe the whole narrative can be reconfigured and recontextualized. But it would take some massive courage from not only my colleagues, but so not only my physician colleagues. I think that my physician colleagues do what they do in the greater good. People that they wake up every day and do their very best to bring their very best to their clients and the world around them and their families, just like any other, upstanding citizen. What would it take is really maybe experiencing the example that conversation, communication, and connection, as well as creativity, self-expression, have a value that supersedes any kind of chemical induction, any kind of diagnostic impression. Can we look across the table at these people that we call our patients and get that we are no different than them? Can we cut into us versus them and have that become us? Can it be that what I bring forth isn't how to be an expert human? It's just an acknowledgement that being human is the challenge that each and every one of us have. So when we work together, if I can be a coach, if I can be one who takes a stand for exploring directions of my friend, of my colleague, of my human counterpart, can doctors see that in the form of creativity, connection, and communication, that is a significant upgrade in the possibility of healing another person from the old paradigm or the prevailing paradigm of psychiatric diagnosis, chemical imbalance, induction of laboratory-based medication, and hope for the best. It is my hope and dream that this could actually seep into my field. And yet, with all due respect, it isn't that anybody's doing anything wrong. We're actually doing what we're taught. It may be that we can reduce the interventions that we're having and actually have a much greater impact on the healing of the world around us.
Absolutely. And there is so many new things that come up, more, if I can broadly use the word, merging the spiritual or the elements that were not part of, science, but they are more and more merging. And with what's happening in the world anyway right now, there is more and more pressure into science, because if you can't give the answers, you can't keep on saying, trust me, I'm the science, if you don't have the valid answers. So I want to go back to something that you said about the conversations, and there was a phrase that I read on your website about, and I will read it as it was at the heart of all healing is someone who really wants to be heard. So can you explain that to me, how you mean it, in what sense, what healing and heard in what sense?
Can you repeat what is on the website?
Yes, it was at the heart of all healing is someone who really wants to be heard. And you mentioned it already earlier on in what you were saying.
Yes. I really maintain that each and every person, and I mean 100% of people, more than anything else, really want to be heard. And heard is different than listened to. And heard is different than having, being in the presence of one's utterances. Heard is actually being heard, resonated with, gotten, like actually absorbed, actually received, and I've never met a person who's not interested in being heard. Now, there are people out there, I don't give a hoot whether I'm heard. Well, those people want to be heard for not giving a hoot about being heard. So everybody still really wants to be heard. And when I have had the opportunity, rare as it is, to actually resonate with another person such that they feel heard, from there, that's where miracles happen. Once someone is heard for whatever their core wounds are, or whatever it is they're dealing with life, either circumstantially or internally, from their history, like the unfortunate traumas they might have had, or the unfortunate traumas that might be going on right now, even the losses or the pain, the suffering of the grief. There's all those sort of negative feelings that it's important to be heard. But it's also important to be heard as the special divine being that each of us are. So getting the whole picture and being heard, for me, I have found myself in various times, I like to say there's 40,000 people in the last 40 years who, at least for a moment, had me as their doctor. So whether it was a nursing home or in a homeless shelter or in a residential facility or a home visit, inpatient unit, outpatient unit, all the many places that I've met people, what I really, really am so certain of is that when I have the opportunity to be the person who finally heard somebody, like, oh my God, doctor, You're the first person who has ever listened to me. It is from there that that person's life transforms instantly. There is no need for re-diagnosing. There's no need for changing or increasing medicine. There's no need to, put somebody on the couch for 6 months or 6 years. There's no need for very much follow-up, because once someone is heard, they're not as lonely as they were before they were heard. And that loneliness, that's devastating. That's treacherous. I have something that no one can hear and no one should hear. And I'm never going to say it because I can't tell anybody because no one will ever hear me, is a prison. That's a prison. That's an internal prison. And when we're able to expose our true self to another person or to a group of people and have it resonate such that we're heard, it is truly from there that all healing emanates, all, not just in mental illness or in mental health, but in all of our human suffering and all of our human pain and all of our human wants and needs comes from the ability or the interest, the reflection of another person such that we are heard. And when that happens, and I think we all know the experience, there's something called love that actually shows up there. One can actually, you might get, or we might get, Augie, that we're resonating. You and I talked before the show that we are up to very similar things. We came from a little bit different directions with each other. We both have this beard and this bald head. We both come from the healing professions. We're both love podcasting, and we're both about really having other people express themselves. What if you and I got right now that the magic that's coming between you and I getting each other even a little more, that space that we're creating has a healing eminence, a healing capacity like a stone in a river on the people who are watching and listening to us, that can warm their hearts and give them the possibility of being heard so that they go through today actually more healed than they were before they saw Fred and Augie actually getting along with each other in such a way as getting each other and hearing each other and listening and being with each other as an act of humanity. What if that's the impact that you and I are having right now on even one other person? Wouldn't that be just wonderful?
Yes, it would. And I think you will agree with me, being a fellow podcaster, that this is actually the deeper reason why we do
exactly
what we do. And you earlier on, you kind of read my mind on a question I wanted to ask when you said that being listened to is curative, not just for mental illness, but for any healing, really. And that was something that I wanted also to iterate and make sure that the listener understands that it can also be the physical illnesses and not just the mental. So I would appreciate a comment specifically on that, Dr. Fred.
Well, I have a friend that another physician friend, a colleague who we were a partner together in business and in life for 3 years in Sacramento, and she's a remarkable pediatrician, and so a shout out to Dr. Louise Glazer in Sacramento. And, as a pediatrician and now as a palliative physician, I just spoke with her yesterday, so I'm fresh on this. She is really able to cure and heal physical illness. And it's not a matter of like touch healing or faith healing, nothing like that. She goes into these conversations with a skill set that includes a deep, passionate interest in getting another person. She used to talk about being able to cure earaches by listening to people, to actually cure ear infections by listening to these children, or to cure knee pain, or to cure back pain, or to cure toothaches. It is outstanding what happens inside the realignment of our whole self when we can resonate with another person. You could say something like, maybe like a tuning fork, that when you pop a tuning fork and another tuning fork starts to go at that same, the same resonance, that level of collegialship, if you will, of being fellow humans, fellow people, causes curative value, not only in the mental realm, and perhaps not only in the physical realm, but mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional realms are all resonated with, and a new level of aliveness or a new level of alacrity, a new level of purpose naturally correlates, naturally arises from that resonance, so that the miracle of healing can take place really right in front of our very eyes by being attuned with another person.
And I would add to that list, you said also it would be a new level of humanity as well when we're able to operate like that as a collective.
Yes.
I wanted
Amen.
also.
Amen is that. Amen.
It is certainly, we can hope, and maybe also, apart from hoping, which is not doing much really, it's also contributing each to their own extent in their own way by being who they are, and maybe perfecting what they are capable of, to be able to extend that. We were talking earlier about the ripple effect, and I wanted to ask you also, Dr. Fred, about you have an upcoming film that you are making about, it's called Global Madness, and it is about the global state of mental health. And what I would like to ask really is, how do you envision being able to look at, how do you envision looking at mental health rather than how it is now?
Yeah. A great question. Thank you for asking. And, the Global Madness Project has been put in the back burner, but it's actually coming back onto the front burner. So I'm excited to speak to it. What I saw, this was before the changes in travel restrictions that have taken place in the last couple of years. What I saw was the possibility of going around the world. I have done a fair amount of world traveling, and I did some studying on how mental health and mental illness is defined and described in various cultures worldwide. So, how the mental illness, or we'll say mental distress or discomfort, is dealt with in Zimbabwe and Rwanda is a little bit different than how it's dealt with in Sydney, Australia, or in the heart of China, or Singapore, or Finland, or Norway, or Little Rock, Arkansas, or Vancouver, Canada, or if you want to even say, Cancun, Mexico. And the idea here is that if there's multiple definitions of what mental health and mental illness is, then that just means that there's no definition.
Yes.
Like if I have a broken arm, my broken arm will be broken if I go to Tokyo too. No one will say, "Oh, you don't have a broken arm. You're in Tokyo." We don't call that a broken arm. No, a broken arm is a broken arm in Tokyo. It's a broken arm in Jakarta. It's a broken arm in Dubai. It's a broken arm in Sacramento. Mental illness, that is not the truth with mental illness. It's possible that being labeled mentally ill in Sacramento could actually not be mentally ill in San Francisco, just 2 hours down the road. In fact, it's possible that being mentally ill in downtown Sacramento is not the same as being mentally ill in suburban Sacramento. And when we start looking, that definition is so liquid and therefore so variable. My intention with Global Madness was to go around the world to go around the world and interview caregivers, interview patients, clients, interview family members, and see how does this notion of being outcast, or the notion of being afflicted or affected or defective or ill, how is that dealt with in various cultures? And I started to learn about some beautiful things that are going around the world that are way more effective than this diagnosis, chemical imbalance intervention paradigm. And some of them are just simply beautiful. There's a man in Australia who has surf therapy. So you come with him for 2 weeks, he teaches you how to surf, and then whatever you had in mental illness wise when you arrived is long gone after 2 weeks. There's someone in, I think it's in Zimbabwe, where they have a shortage of physicians. So they've had to come up with what they think was an alternative mechanism for dealing with mental distress. And there's these orange picnic benches for which grandmothers sit on the picnic bench, sort of waiting all day for the next person to come up to them. What does she do? She listens. That's all she does. She listens to the point of getting the person understood. When that person has now resonated with grandmother, we've already talked about what's happening. What happens then is the miracle of healing. Right there, right then, right now is the miracle of healing upon the heels of being heard. Now, different cultures have different ways, but the thing that's part of where I think I got this idea that being heard and then applying creativity is the best we have, taking care of ourselves, making sure that we reduce or at least deal with the toxins that we're being fed all day long in all our senses. And then really steadying ourselves and being with other people allows them to be with us. And in that, I'm not sure that it gets any better than that in the world, Augie. I think that might be the highest level of humanity.
I think so too. And I liked you said the phrase the miracle of healing, and just sharing my own perspective on that. It is indeed a miracle because I think that it's no doctor or no medicine can actually do the healing. It is the body that does the healing. The doctor or the drug facilitate the process, but they don't do it. And so thank you for this miracle of healing, because it is indeed a miracle, and in many ways we don't even know how it happens.
That's right. We really don't. That's for sure.
It's a very fascinating conversation, and I'm sad that I have to start bringing it to some conclusions,
Okay.
Dr. Fred. So
Sure.
there are some questions that are I always ask my guests, and I would love to get your thoughts. So
Sure.
one I always ask, well, it's not who are you, it's you do. It's what does personal development mean to you?
What does personal development mean? It means that I am not perfect. It means that the opportunity here is to always commit myself to growing and developing. You know, my wife and I are working through things, and, you know, last night we had a conversation, and it didn't end at the perfect note, but we woke up this morning and there was an opportunity to really see, oh, we can use that as a stepping stone to grow into a new self. You know, development is something, you could say recovering from core wounds is part of development, or you could say growing into a man, a human, an adult, a person, a citizen who is curiously looking for where I can be a contribution. Where can I be a valuable contribution to the world around me? To me, personal development circulates around that question of where can I be a valuable contribution to the world around me.
Absolutely. And I've come to understand myself that personal development, even if it says personal, it's not about the person, it's about contribution, as you said. Dr. Fred, a hypothetical question. Let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
Yeah, I think the one piece of advice I would give my 18-year-old is you have a wonderful heart, and your curiosity is spectacular. And be careful not to be seduced by the world around you for pursuing admiration and accolades. So in other words, be careful not to go simply for shiny objects, that my heart and my soul and my curiosity are enough to carry the day, and that there's some danger in just chasing down shiny objects. And the shiny objects are going to be my nemesis most of my life. I could tell my 18-year-old that if you don't watch out, shiny objects will be your nemesis for the rest of your life. And these last 45 years have been proof of that.
I wanted to ask, I'm always, and it is part of what my intention is as this podcast host, is to give to the listener something that is actionable, because I believe that information is useful, yes, but taking the action and doing something with the information is by far more useful. So based on what we talked today, if you were to give to the listener something actionable they can implement, what would you advise?
Well, based on the conversation we had today, I think, each of us are going through our own lives. This is a crazy life without any recipes. It's crazier than it's ever been. It's impossible to completely negotiate properly what our next step should be. It's even impossible to know who's in our tribe and who's developing as an enemy, or, there's so much going on. They're sad and can be very uncomfortable and even miserable, or even approaching intolerable. And that's very real. So number one, there's something about be compassionate with your own pain. There's something about be forgiving and accepting for the damage that you may have caused in your life. And one of the ways to walk out of that misery, if I was to give an actionable step, in my book, The Creative 8, I speak to 8 different things that one can do to instantaneously reduce any kind of mental discomfort. The 8 different artistic methodology, like art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, and gardening. But then there's a couple more. And then finally, there's this last one. And the one, when all else fails, help anyone do anything. That would be the actionable step. Help anyone do anything. And from there, there's so much that becomes available. Instantly, all my pains go away when I do that. I help another person, and there's just a warmth, a pillowy warmth of what it means to be a human when I'm helping another person do whatever it is that they're doing. So that's the step, I think, Argy.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's heartwarming. Dr. Fred, what is the best place for someone who wants to find out more about you? Where is the best place to go?
Well, the website is due for reconstruction. It still represents me maybe a couple years ago, but it's a fine place to go. So welcometohumanity.net is that website. The email that I think is the best way to get a hold of me, it is the best way, is Dr. Fred, Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. You can come listen to my podcast, as you said, the Welcome to Humanity podcast, or you can find me on social media. And I'm looking at some other ways to be found as well. But in social media, I'm in Facebook. I like Facebook and LinkedIn. I don't really like Facebook. I do sort of like LinkedIn, and I don't really like any of it. But there's, I'm also on Insta and Twitter and YouTube. But really, LinkedIn and Facebook are the places to find me. And I'm open for discovery calls. I'm open to talk to people about ways that I can be useful. How can I help anybody do anything? And what kind of conversations are there? Spaces where I can be used for families or for groups or for individuals who are just interested in rebalancing and resonating and getting their life back, like actually getting that we are simply humans, figuring out what our next steps are.
I want to thank you very much. This has been such an, in many ways, enlightening conversation for me. So I appreciate very much your insights and everything that you shared with us. And I want to wish you all the best with your projects and your vision and what you are working towards. Any last parting words?
Yes, we talked earlier, and I think we can both resonate with this. I have the program, the most exciting new program is this True Voice podcasting program that I've just put out. And the True Voice podcasting is an opportunity to give people, to show people how easy and fun it is to do what me and you do. Like the opportunity to really be able to step behind a mic and explore areas of interest that might resonate with other people. And it can be anything from, crazy thoughts, like how to be a single mother in Texas with Pomeranians. If you had a podcast that was that, it would have a following. And so what I do in True Voice podcasting is really help people find their message that they want to spin out to the world, the message that is actually resonating with them, and then show them how the art of podcasting, but really it's right here to be had, and it's right here to explore. And it might be the last remaining vestige of unmonitored, free access to free self-expression that's out here in the whole world. So there's an urgency in getting our messages out, and True Voice podcasting really is a 13-week program that brings you your very own podcast at the end with 4 published episodes. And it's super fun, and I'm having a great time. And if anyone's interested in that, I just would, you get to be like me and you. I mean, how much fun are we having? We're both like kids in a candy store.
You can say that again. Thank you very much, Dr. Fred.
Thank you. It's been great.
I hope you enjoyed listening. If you have, please share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to know more about what I do, visit my website agikeramidas.com. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,